What's going on, y'all? Welcome to episode 48 of the Half Price Concessions podcast, featuring a conversation with Ace Speedway and South Boston Speedway late model driver Thomas Scott. This was a real fun conversation. It was great to get to sit down and talk to Thomas to just get his point of view on how 2020 has gone for him and just how different it has been in his world and the late model racing world, especially with South Boston Speedway not racing at all this season and just getting to run a little bit here and there, as opposed to previous seasons where Thomas has been in the top 5 in the points at South Boston Speedway and running on a pretty consistent and regular basis. So about an hour-long conversation, but a really good one. Glad you guys are here for it. Make sure you are subscribed to the Half Price Concessions podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Podcast. If you're listening on our YouTube page, you can subscribe there as well, but make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way you get notified every time we put out a new episode, and we've got a lot of new episodes still to come, so make sure you're staying tuned to us. But on the other side of these messages, we'll step in with Thomas Scott on episode 48 here of the Half Price Concessions podcast.
When you're eating breakfast, you don't think twice about hitting an electric line in your cereal. If you're looking through your dresser, does damaging a fiber optic line cross your mind? Of course not, because those utilities are buried underground. So don't think twice about calling 811 before digging. 811 is a free service, takes as little as 5 minutes, protects you and your neighborhood, and it's the law. So call or click 811 today. This safety message brought to you by North Carolina 811.
This episode of the Half Price Concessions podcast is brought to you with support from Performance Center Racing Warehouse. In addition to being the home of the PRW chassis, Performance Center offers in-house setups and consulting, plus suspension and chassis pull-down analysis, along with their fabrication shop that can re-clip your race car with the fastest turnaround in the industry. Give Roger Johnson and the Performance Center team the chance to earn your racing business by calling them today at 704-838-1400 or visit them online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. Here on the Half Price Concessions podcast and episode 48. Is this 48? Yes, it is 48. Thomas Scott joins us. Thomas, we're sitting in your shop, and behind you is the last race car I've seen you drive when you had a terrible end to your night at Ace Speedway, and I know it was a tough night for you. It was good to see you there, but it's always tough to see anyone have a bad night. I felt like I was thinking about that when I was on my way over to see you, like how much of that was just a symbolic of your 2020 racing season, because it just seemed like nothing was in the cards to go right this year, unfortunately for you.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, it's definitely been a crazy year. And I think about that last race. It was very disheartening, frustrating, and we had worked pretty hard, leading up to that race. We had last raced at the Hampton Heat up at Langley Speedway in July, and had a lot going on ever since then, some health stuff with my dad and stuff, so we kind of been laying low. And when Robert and Jason said that they would go back to racing, pretty much put a date out, we were like, okay, well, let's get the car together and we'll go back over there. Because at that time we didn't know when the Rod and Cook race was going to be, so I wanted to get some more races in anticipation for that race. So yeah, man, we worked hard, and I spent about 2 weeks straight out here, completely redoing, some stuff, trying to, keep up with the times, man. Stuff you were running a couple years ago don't work anymore. So went to the drawing board and come up with some new stuff, and worked really hard to get to the track with it. And of course, when we went the night before the race, it wasn't where we needed to be, so we trashed on it and got it a lot better. And to get tore up in that first race, knowing we had twins, and the last lap get tore up, that was pretty discouraging. But we'll get it back together. We're building this other car over here too, so yeah, we'll get it back together. But yeah, it's just 2020 for you.
Yeah,
it's been throwing all kinds of curveballs at everybody for sure.
It's going to be the punchline for probably jokes the rest of our life. And we're like, it could be worse. It could be 2020.
Probably so. I've never experienced anything like this year. You know, it's crazy.
It feels like, just in the time I've known you for racing, and correct me if I'm wrong, this feels like the least I've ever seen you race, period. Like, I mean, because the last couple of years, I know you had been running the full schedule at South Boston and running top 3 in the points, and you'd gotten to venture out a little bit, going to Langley and some other things. Like, is this the least amount you can remember racing in a calendar year? Yeah,
I think so. I know back in 2017, I want to say, I maybe run just a race or two more than I run this year, just because I think that was the year that I was going to retire, or the year before that I was going to retire. So I bought my house that off season and kind of was just like, didn't even think about racing. And then I think, when Robert and Jason ran their first race over at Ace, I'm pretty sure it was, I don't know, it was the weekend, the race I broke my foot when I crashed in practice in Monks Modified. But that was my first race that year. And I think I only run, I was hurt for a couple months with a broke foot, and then I run a few races. That was 2017. But, I mean, it hadn't been a whole lot of racing this year for a lot of people. It's just, we got ready to go to South Boston's opening race this year. Like, we were literally the night before we were loading up for practice, or the night before practice. We were in the shop, had the car already, getting ready to load up, and we got the notification that they were going to cancel the weekend. It was like, well, dadgummit.
Were you holding out some hope, like, okay, maybe it'll be next weekend? Or
yeah.
Never would have seen it like this where they didn't race at all.
No, I never imagined it would have been like this. And we were pretty, like, man, what are we going to do? I guess we'll just wait until South Boston opens. And then, no tracks were running. Everything was shutting down. And, even like work and stuff, we were basically closing down, I just never seen anything like it. And, when Robert and Jason, decided they were going to open back up and race, we were like, well, let's give it a shot. It's the only track running. It's home. It's still home. Ace is always going to be my home track. And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And, we tried the first couple races that they ran up there before Cars Tour race. I mean, we even had a thought of doing the Cars Tour race, just because I've never done one. But the engine parity this year has just been way off, and with us only having a Chevy upgrade engine, it's kind of hard. It's been very difficult to compete against the Harrington motors. So without being able to go out and just buy a new motor to be on the same page as everybody else, we kind of scratched that idea. So we ran Ace twice at the beginning of the year, and then we went to Langley for their season opener anticipation for running the Hampton Heat, which we went back for, I think, 2 weeks after the opening race. So 2 races at Ace early in the year, 2 races at Langley, and then 1 more at Ace. That's all we got this year.
That has to mess with your rhythm. I feel like you've got to be at your best when you're racing the most and you're able to be in the seat. And I know if money wasn't an object, you'd run 6 days a week probably.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I know that probably had to hinder you, because I've heard Donald Bratcher, I've heard guys, dirt, asphalt, whatever, talk about you got to be in the seat.
You do, and I mean it affects you more than you realize. Not spending a whole lot of time out here at the shop has been great, because I just got married this year, so I've been able to spend time with my wife and my daughter. But not getting used to, or not being out here working a couple nights a week, if you're not careful, you can get lazy or gain weight or whatever, because you're not working as much as you used to. and saying that definitely for racing. But you know, it got tough. You know, of course we wanted to race, but everywhere that was racing, you know, pretty much once Ace got shut down was, you know, 2 or 3 hours away from us. And you know, when it comes down to traveling and stuff, it just makes it just way too expensive for us to go do it. I mean, we can barely go race competitively local, you know, without having to, you know, spend that much money to travel. So it actually worked out. I mean, like I said, getting married and being able to focus on, you know, building my family and stuff, and spending time with my wife and my daughter has been kind of great. It's kind of worked out that we kind of chilled out on racing a little bit this year and got to do that. So I've definitely looked at it that way as it's been good for that reason.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot the last couple of years on. I found a lot of articles about you on Race 22 where I could kind of go back and catch up on everything the last few years for you, from, you know, kind of being the underdog going to Martinsville and, you know, South Boston and all this stuff. But I want to learn something about you.
Yeah.
Because I've known about you from when we went to church together. When I started going back out to Ace, you were in the modified. I want to learn about the go-kart, because I've had Amber Baldwin tell me go-kart stories about you. I've heard a couple other ones. And I went stalking, I don't know if it was your page or your mama's Facebook page, and I found a picture of you in the go-kart. I think it had a yellow body or a kind of a goldish body on it. I've never asked you about the go-kart day, so tell me about where it all kind of got started for you with the go-kart.
So I'll actually go all the way back to the beginning. Back when I was about 10 years old, me and my brother, we got dirt bikes. And, you know, I was a little chunky kid growing up, and, you know, it's kind of, you know, to race dirt bikes and stuff, you had to practice a lot and be kind of fit. And I was always the chunky kid. So I started out racing dirt bikes. We went up to Rolling Hills in Reedsville. That's where my dad used to race when he was a kid. And I think I run like two races or so, 2 or 3 races. And my mom saw one of my friends that I actually went to school with at the time get hurt pretty bad. So she pretty much
So get him
she
off the
pretty
bike.
much said, we're not going to race dirt bikes anymore, which, you know, whatever. So at the time, I'd been also kind of helping a friend of mine race go-karts off and on down at Liberty. So I'd been going to the track with him, helping him, and you know, he'd let me get on his go-kart every once in a while. So we went and bought a go-kart, and we went out there to Liberty on a Friday night, and I think I run, I don't know, second in my first race, and it was just like 5 or 6 karts. But yeah, from then on we got into it. I think we run out that whole year. You know, this would have been back probably 2002, maybe 2003. I was 12 or 13 years old, and we had like this 95 or 96 Phantom Stalker chassis go-kart, and you know, it's just way outdated. So once we run probably, I think we started like halfway through the season, finished out that year running, you know, 5 or 6 races, and then we become pretty good friends with Jay Dalton and Undertaker, you know, Boo Boo's dad, and we had connections through Jerry Raybon at the time, was doing our engines. He's actually a sponsor of Boo Boo's, but yeah, so we got an Undertaker go-kart over the winter, and you know, we decided to start racing at Liberty for like points that first year, and I did that for a couple years. I think I was 13 and 14 were the 2 full years we ran go-karts. I ran some at Caswell County Speedway off and on, and Liberty. Trying to think of where else we went and raced at. We never went and did the King of Concrete or anything like that, but it honestly,
that would have probably permanently hurt your neck if you
probably
had.
So. Yeah, probably so. That's not something to mess around with. I mean, I would love to do it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not scared, but I I'd love to do it, but it's just, we never went and did it. So go-kart racing honestly got to where it was just as expensive as, Dad was running his modified at the time at Ace, and we were spending more money on me racing go-karts than he was racing his modified.
So I can't fathom that. Like, is it in the tires, or is it in?
It's in the tires and the entry fees, and
winning $25 if you win the race,
stuff like that. What you got to imagine, through the late '90s and early 2000s. I mean, my dad was winning 10 or 12 races a year in the modified division at Ace. So he was winning a lot and not really spending a whole lot. I know he went a few years there where he didn't tear stuff up, and he kind of had a setup, and that car was just working so good. He went a few years there without having to spend a lot of money on it. So
I always remember he was notorious for only having one hand on the
driving
wheel.
One hand.
You could always see that right hand just resting. And I remember Brad Allen told me one time, he said, I went up there and wanted to hit him hard enough to make him put that hand back on the wheel. I said, I felt like I did something. But that just shows how good he was.
Yeah, I mean,
he hit on something.
Well, he broke his wrist during a race at Ace on dirt back in, I think it was 88 or 89. And, back then, cars were old-timey and steering was slow and stuff. And I think he bumped wheels with somebody and snapped his right wrist. And he actually finished the race by putting his arm over wherever, kind of keeping his arm away from the steering wheel.
Yeah. Racing
on dirt, finished the race with a broke wrist. And I'm pretty sure ever since then, that's how he started driving. And he claims it's so much smoother, which he always just, the way he drove was just so smooth. He could just pull it down in the middle of the corner and just one-hand it. So I find myself sometimes driving one hand, but I use my right hand and kind of just let my left hand loose and just work the wheel with my right hand. So it's kind of opposite of him, but
I always thought maybe it was so that you wouldn't overcorrect. Is that part of it maybe?
I mean, maybe. I know sometimes you got to work the wheel, especially at Ace, coming across the bumps, coming off of 4. If you don't hit them right, you got to snap the wheel pretty fast to kind of keep up with it. So I don't know. That's weird. I can't really explain it, but that's just how it is. And but yeah, we got back to the go-karts. It was easy to get off there. We got to where we were spending more money doing that than racing cars, and I was getting close to being 16, because at the time you had to be 16 to race at NASCAR tracks. So I think we quit racing go-karts in 2015, and then I started practicing his modified at Ace, anticipation for my year I turned 16 is when I started driving it.
Yeah.
So
did you have to go to him and ask, or was it kind of just understood it's going to be my turn?
Well, by then he had won a whole lot of stuff, and I had been so involved in working on the car and in the shop. When he was up there at night, I was up there at night. So, I had really taken interest to wanting to do it, and knowing how to do it, like knowing how to work on the car and fabricate stuff and fix stuff and set the car up and stuff. So I had really shown him that I was invested in wanting to do it. So he didn't have a problem, giving me a chance every once in a while getting out there. And I can remember it to the day, just feeling that feeling of the the G-forces and stuff when the first few times I got to drive it. Just the coolest thing, just such an adrenaline rush. And I remember that first year, or right before I turned 15 or 16 and started driving the modified, I got the opportunity to drive Ann Davis's Extreme car over there. I drove a mini stock over there a few times.
On top of all the bicycle races you won.
Yep. Yep. And Robert Turner had a ride-along experience car over there at about that same time, and actually did like a driving school. And I actually did that one weekend, one Saturday after a race. I'll never forget that because they had they had it set up for very novice beginner people, and they had it had to be like a 5500 chip in this thing, and or had it geared where it was like chipping way early. I remember like my first lap, I went out there and let it rip. And I was like chipping it coming off the corner and just holding it in the rev limiter all the way down the straightaway. And Robert, I remember, I only got like 20-something laps that day, but yeah, that was fun. So by the time I was ready to race, I had driven a lot of stuff at Ace. Pretty much all the different kinds of cars that they had at the time. So, we gave up on go-kart racing after a couple of years, and I've heard it has not gotten any cheaper.
No, probably just gotten more expensive.
Now it amazes me some of the money I see those guys race for nowadays.
20,000 to win,
yes,
10,000 to win.
That's crazy, especially knowing what we spend to race late models. But
it's pretty wild.
So we done that for a couple of years, and that was it. I was ready to move on into cars, because I was close to, I got a late start. I didn't start racing really till I was 12. So by the time I was 15, we were getting ready for me to move up to big cars.
So you got to hop in the modified, and I remember I had come back to the track in 08 as a fan, and you were running the modified division.
That's right.
So that was really cool to see. You getting to do that. About where in your head did you kind of decide, all right, we need to go to the late model rank? Because I know for our childhoods at Ace, it seemed like, with the exception of Brian King and maybe a few others, a lot of people just kind of stayed in that division. There wasn't a lot of, people moved up from super stock to late model, but not so much modified. When did that come to you?
Well, modified at that time period was just so affordable to race, and of course my dad had pretty much, between him and Brian King, had pretty much owned the division there for a few years, and we had a really good car that was set up for that division, and we didn't have to spend a lot of money to upgrade it because they didn't really change the rules a whole lot back then, and it was very, you could use stuff off of like late models. Like they run pretty much a late model type engine. Just stuff hadn't changed for many years. So we were pretty much, I run 2 full seasons of modifieds over there. 2016, I ran my first race over there. That was when I finished third my first race, which I thought was the coolest thing. And then I got Rookie of the Year in 07. And then actually, if you remember, that was like one of the first years they did the chase or something.
Points reset or whatever.
Points reset. And I actually went into the last race with an opportunity to win the championship my rookie year. And I was leading the race. And Mike Massey was driving, I think, Brad Allen's other car or something, and he was right on my tail for second, and putting some pressure on me. And I think I wrecked on my own, I do believe. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I lost it on my own, just trying to drive over my head to keep the lead. Because I had a lot of pressure, and that was the first time I'd ever been in that kind of situation. And it's real easy to think back now, let's see, I'm 30 now. At least 15 years ago, how immature and dumb and a lot of mistakes I made around that time frame. But we run that division for a couple years, and that following year, I think I can't remember who ran the track in 2008.
I think that was Doug Smith's
Doug Smith's last year. Yeah, and we had we had some falling outs there through August, I think, with the track management, and we kind of, I think that was I had a run in with Josh Nichols. That was when my picture was on the front page of the Burlington Times News with me throwing the steering wheel.
Did you at least make contact, or did he miss it?
Oh, I hate it. Well, it actually ended up being a pump fake.
Oh,
and but the photographer for the Times News had this awesome shot. And so at that time, we were kind of just, I think I got fined and stuff, and we were just kind of disgusted with how things were looking over there. And that was right when, the economy was going bad and stuff, and a lot was changing at that time, and which was an absolute horrible time to try to get into late model racing.
Yeah,
when there was
you couldn't have picked the worst time.
No money out there. But,
gas was like $5.50, and people were losing their homes.
Yeah, it was a weird time back in 2008, 2009. But we pretty much, by that point, I had a lot of experience helping Rodney Cook on Saturdays and going racing with him everywhere, South Boston, Orange County, Franklin County, Martinsville a few years. I'd had some experience outside of Ace Speedway, and not saying it's a bad thing at all about Ace Speedway, because that's always going to be my home track, but it's really easy for people to be locked into Ace Speedway only. They can only run good at Ace Speedway. There's a few people that obviously came through could do stuff elsewhere, but they're during that time frame. It was real easy to get locked into just being a driver at Ace Speedway, and we were looking out. I wanted the opportunity to get to race at other tracks. No other tracks ran the modifieds, so we actually got an opportunity. My first late model car, I brought it from Brad Allen. It was one of Robert Turner's old cars. Back then, I can't remember what we paid for that car, but it was hardly nothing. Had a brand new body on it. But we went out and bought it the end of 2008 and built it over that winter.
You had to be thinking, I'm about to go out here and be like Philip Morris. I'm going to go set the world on fire in this thing. Or did you manage expectations?
No, I definitely managed my expectations, but I never realized how hard it was to race late models until I got out there. I had actually had very little experience in a full body heavy car, and I had only had 2 years of experience running a 2,800 pound modified that's offset and straight rail and stuff, and the modifieds are so glued to the track, and just so you got to be so smooth with them, so and they just go fast, and it really threw me for a curveball the first 2 years or so of being in a full late model, just because I didn't start in anything that I had to slide around in. Didn't run much mini stocks, didn't run limited late model, nothing like that. So the learning curve coming from modified to late model, to straight to late model, was very steep. And of course, we had, when we run late model, when we started out, we didn't have what everybody else had. We had a 15-year-old car when I first started, and it was just very difficult to go out there and race competitively. I remember that first year, 2009, that was actually when I went to college in Pennsylvania, the fall of 2008. So we built this car over the winter while I was in school 8 hours away. So I would come home every other weekend, I believe, and we'd work on the car, and then I'd go back up to school. But we got it. We were going to start out at Ace, and it's tough.
Yeah,
it was tough go. I remember the first couple races or so, I'd get lapped probably I don't know, every 15, 20 laps. And it wasn't fun, but we knew, we were there.
You had to learn.
We had to learn. And
because I'm sure nothing setup-wise crossed over at all.
Not at all.
You really had to start from scratch as far as setups, everything.
I didn't know nearly what I know now back then. We just bolted the car together. There was a lot of stuff that was just coming into late model racing at that time, like the exotic front suspension stuff and all the knowledge that comes along with that. We still wasn't running bump stops or nothing like that, but you had an idea of what would work, but you didn't know. It just wasn't enough technology available to us at that time, and I just 18 years old, just didn't have the knowledge that to put something together. So yeah, I remember we come over there, went to Ace, built the car, went to Ace, and I remember I had picked up this like 1,400-pound coilover spring at like some dirt track in Pennsylvania when I was in college. Like, I was going to races and stuff when I was up there, because I love racing. So anywhere there was a race within 2 or 3 hours, I was up there 18 years old by myself. I was going to go find something to do. So anyway, I picked up this like big, I think it was like a 1,400-pound coilover spring. I'd never seen one that big before. When I saw it, I was like, dude had it on the back of his trailer with like a little poster that said parts for sale. I guess he had like some miscellaneous parts. I paid like $5 for that spring. Never seen one like it. And I remember I put that thing on, I had that thing on the right rear, because that was right when the big bar soft spring setup stuff come out. And man, like, that thing had no give to it at all. And I remember we were trying to make that work, and I didn't know what I was doing back then. So not only did we not have the equipment that everybody else had, we just didn't have the know-how to make it work. So that was definitely a tough couple years getting my feet wet late model racing, for sure.
I'm sure, like you said, you look back now and you're just like, oh my gosh, why were we doing this, that, and the other? Yeah, no, you're 100% right. But it's been such a good journey. Those first couple of years, really humbled me a whole lot. And I grew up a lot in those first couple of years when it come to maturing as a driver. And my dad and my mom, they stood behind me from the beginning. That was back when we would start, it would just be us going to the track and stuff. I know you've been a few times to help us. I think my first time at Martinsville, you were up there on practice day helping me. Yeah, I went with you to practice day, and then at South Boston, I got in trouble because I wore shorts.
That's right.
They wouldn't let me over the wall.
I remember that.
Your dad offered to duct tape some rags to my calves so I wouldn't get in trouble.
But yeah, man, we come from what I would say, learning things the hard way and trying to make it work when it definitely shouldn't have. And it really helped me out a lot. We ran the first 2 years running late model with that old, it was a short truck arm, like 95 Redding chassis with a Barry Begley front clip. I remember that. And we had actually cut the pickup points off of it and my dad had took his torch and made some slotted plates and welded the control arm mounts back on there so we could have some adjustment on the control arms and stuff, even though I didn't have a clue where to put them at.
That looks good.
We had adjustment stuff. So we ran that for the first 2 years, and then in 2000, that was 2009, 2010. In 2010, this car right here, actually, it's this car right here, was a car that Dustin Rumley was running, and he almost went out of the park off of turn 2 with.
Yeah.
Bad wreck. Totaled. Well, to him it was totaled. The frame rail was bent on it. The front clip was knocked off of it. So over that winter, we actually bought this car, and it was like a 05 Townsend. And I had a 05 Townsend clip that I picked up from Scotty Warren that he had just cut off. It was straight and everything. So I had found a 05 Townsend, had a 05 Townsend clip, And
picking up these parts like they're like they're Walmart items in the $3 bin. I picked up a front clip. I picked up a spring.
I've always raced like that. I mean, that's how it works. So we bought this car, and it was a bare chassis, and me and my dad cut it up, and we put the front clip on it, and put a frame rail on it, and we were excited for 2011. We had what was a newer chassis to us, more of what people were running at that time. 05 wasn't that old in 2010. It was 5 or 6 years old. So we were excited, and so we built that car over that winter, and that was back right when Stacy Puryear was starting his parts business. And we spent a lot of money with him that year, and got a new body and all kinds of stuff. And he had actually, back then, well, I mean, even now, he very smart when it comes to setting up cars and stuff. But he really took the opportunity to kind of help me, give me some knowledge on how to set the car up. At the time, I thought I was the stuff. I was building my own shocks, and I had all the Penske shocks, and had my own rebuild kit and stuff, and just didn't have a clue what I was doing. Didn't have a dyno or anything. So he kind of gave me some
some knowledge.
Build your shocks like this, and run these springs, and run this camber, caster, all that kind of stuff. So we really started out. 2011 was when we started having some decent runs where we could run a whole race at Ace and not get lapped, or we could pretty much get a fifth place at Ace every once in a while. And by then, I had ran at a few different tracks. I had been to Orange County and South Boston. So I had some experience at some faster tracks, which helped me as a driver grow. So
it's a never-ending journey to learn, I guess.
No, it's not, man.
You're never going to satisfy to learn.
No, and I would definitely say, I mean, I don't, it's so easy to think back now, knowing everything I know now about how wrong we did it back then. But, it's, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't guess.
I know obviously you looked up to your dad as a kid and stuff, because your dad was, number one is your dad, and number two, was he 8-time Ace Speedway modified champion?
Yeah. Well, he was,
6 on asphalt, 2 on dirt, I think.
Something like, no, it's 5 on asphalt and 3 on dirt. Yeah.
So, did you have any late model guys you looked up to as a kid? Because at these tracks you were probably going to, definitely at Ace, and then these other places where you were going to help. Like, who were some of the guys you remember looking at and being like, man, that guy's good?
Well, I had a lot of people I looked up to when I was growing up. Definitely, I think of Robert Turner. He was very, very much somebody that I looked up to and tried to learn from a whole lot. Back in the 90s when I was growing up, Robert Turner, Todd Massey, Ray Young, all those guys, I really like. Any chance I got to learn something from them, I took it. And back to my earlier comment about, at that time it was real easy for somebody to be in Ace Speedway and not really venture out to the outside world that much. Back then we really didn't go to many races, at South Boston, Orange County. We went to Orange County some, but I really knew a lot of people from Ace and didn't really get a lot of chances to go watch other people race. So once I got out to, of course, when I was real young, Barry Beggerly was one of my heroes. My mom will always joke, or she tells me that, when was a toddler or whatever, I used to pull, say Barry Begley before I'd pull for my dad and stuff like that. But I mean, you got to think back then at that time frame was when he was the man, winning his national championships and stuff. So, but yeah, I looked up to, Rodney Cook and Rodney, he and I had a great friendship, and I didn't get to know him until I was about 14 or 15 years old. It was right before I could start driving. And he's just such an incredible person. A lot of people knew him as being extremely hard-nosed and, but man, was he a good person. And, I got the opportunity to, me and my dad, we started going to races with him and helping him on his crew. I mean, I remember, I started out like helping Nookie do the tires, which was Rodney's brother, and then I started spotting, which what
was that like?
I mean, it was at the time, Rodney had pretty much the same person spot for him, and I started spotting for him and kind of coaching him along, as weird as that sounds, as from a driver's standpoint. I just started driving, but I had enough. I'd watched races for so long. I knew how to coach somebody through certain situations. So that's one thing I was always proud of, is that I started spotting for Rodney, and he would always really enjoy, or he would tell me how much he enjoyed my style of coaching him through. And so I started spotting for him, and then the more involved I got, and the more opportunity I got to learn about the cars and late model cars and stuff. I would help him with some setup stuff and go to the shop with him and help him get his car set up and whatnot. And
he was kind of on a similar path as you were, because I remember Rodney Cook running in the modifieds at Ace, and then eventually ended up in late models. And then it was so funny, by 08, 9, 10, 11, when my dad started going to races because I was announcing, he was so impressed with Rodney Cook, and I was like, I told him one time, I was like, yeah, it took him a while to get here. Like, he had to take lumps like Speedy Fawcett did and a lot of those other guys. He didn't just show up and get up there. So
he really didn't. I mean, it's funny you say that, because now I think back, I mean, that is 100% right. He put his time in learning early on, and he really got my fire going and wanting to race late model. Wanting the opportunity to race at other tracks, and getting the opportunity to work with him really, gave me that foundation to think that I could make late model racing work. And between him and he had a extremely, strong work ethic, just like my father. So between both of them, it really instilled in me to like dig in and just, if you can't have what everybody else has, work really hard for it, and eventually you'll get there. So definitely going outside of Ace Speedway with Rodney Cook really helped open my eyes to life outside of Ace Speedway, and wanting to be involved in racing outside of Ace Speedway. So
I had one thing I definitely had to ask you about, and it's probably a two-parter. So 2014 is a pretty cool year for you. You get your first late model win at Ace, and I think it was on opening night.
It was. Yep.
And I remember that being super cool, because I'd seen you kind of not struggling but learning, I guess, and you finally got up to victory lane, and that was a really cool moment. But then also in 2014, you got invited to go to the Denny Hamlin race at South Boston. You're out there with Kyle Busch and Matt Kenseth and Hermie Sadler and those guys. Tell me about that experience, because to me, you know, maybe I've just gotten so accustomed to Martinsville, I'm a little numb to it. But I mean, the Denny Hamlin race for a while there, I mean, that had to be a huge honor for you.
That was cool. You know, that's the only time I had done that race, actually. I got invited the next year, but we didn't go. Yeah, that was...
How'd they invite you? Did they call you on the phone? Did they send you a letter? How'd that even happen?
I actually got a phone call from Lynn Carroll, if I do believe... Yeah. So, I had started 2014 at running the first few races at South Boston, and with hopes of getting the opportunity to get invited to that race. So we had started out the season racing at South Boston, and by then, 2013 was when we finally got our equipment to kind of where we could halfway be competitive. I know I raced some in Orange County, had some podium finishes. I think so, yeah. So
you were turning the corner.
Yeah, we were turning the corner, and 2014 we got the opportunity. Let's see. Yeah, I had just put a new Hedgecock clip on the car late 2013. So I had the newest front clip, newest suspension. So 2014 was like our best shot at what, late model racing. I'd had a few years of experience, and we had decent equipment. We had a good engine from Rayvon, and we had a Chevy steelhead motor because that's what we'd always had. But at that time, it was like what you needed. So we just had it all together, and we started out racing South Boston that year, and in hopes that we could, if they for whatever reason went down and picked regulars at South Boston, to
you'd at least be on the list.
We'd at least be on the list. So I remember, I'd won. We'd run at South Boston, and then I went and won opening night at Ace, got my first late model win. They had already come out with the drivers invited to that race, and I wasn't on there, and I was pretty disappointed. And I remember, I just won, and I'd done some radio interviews and stuff, and it was kind of cool. It's my first win, and of course, I felt really good about myself and what we had going. And I remember about a week before the Denny Hamlin race, Lynn Carroll called me. Somehow he had my number. Want to know if I would be interested in doing it. I guess they needed some more cars. I don't know. But of course, I said, yeah, that might be the only opportunity I get to race in my car against NASCAR drivers, on a local short track in the same kind of car I have, So that was a crazy experience. We found some sponsors, so we had tire money, and we had really cleaned up the car. And I think that was right when Jason had been doing Jason Turner had been doing his decal business for a year or two. So he put a wrap on the car, and we were all just so excited to get the opportunity to go up there and race that big race. And I remember, it was tough competition. They had actually changed the tire compound to try to even it up. We were running
Cup guys. And
yes,
guys.
We were running a different tire compound. We were on F40s instead of the 45s, which is what we'd been racing up at everywhere. So it was tough to get the car balanced out, and everybody, of course, everybody was so close, and the times were close, and I remember, I think I went to the last chance race or heat race or something, and was like one position out of the transfer spot, and I was super bummed out because, man, we had spent all that money, and I barely, what I thought, missed a show, by one spot. And I felt like Kevin Harvick this weekend.
Yeah,
I didn't wreck nobody that.
Yeah, I was about to say you didn't dump somebody in the last chance.
But and then they gave me a provisional, I guess, because I'd been the next person to get in or whatever. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, that was a neat experience. I think I don't know how early that big wreck was I got caught up in, but it was pretty early on in the race. I mean, it was like 30-something cars, 40 cars, and that's a ton of cars at South Boston.
Yeah.
So I remember they had a wreck going into one, and I slid into it, and I think Dustin Rumley, he was behind me, he slid into it as well, and tore the car all to pieces. I mean, it was just, yeah. I remember that was an expensive weekend because we spent a lot of money to go do that race, and then the car got tore up pretty good. Like, I think the greenhouse on the body got all ripped up, so I had to pretty much get a new body and stuff. So, but it's cool. I remember we was parked beside Matt Kenseth.
I was about to ask, did you actually get to interact with them, or were those guys kind of like cornered off and you couldn't get near them without a security clearance?
Matt Kenseth at the time was driving for Lee Pulliam, and we were actually parked right beside Matt Kenseth. So I got to chat with him for a minute. I remember like Denny and Kyle Busch and some of those guys, they were kind of like, they stayed in like a bus or something, RV there. Come out for the driver's meeting, went back to a bus, and then when it's driver intros, come right out. So it was weird, but it was cool. Yeah. Getting to say I raced with those guys is pretty cool. But now looking at 2020 Thomas Scott, it's kind of like, well, everybody I've raced against over the years, now I'm seeing people I race against, like racing trucks and Xfinity and stuff, and it's kind of cool, but once you get on the track now, everybody's just a competitor to you.
Just another car.
Like I used to, I say that and it's pretty cool, but like last couple years racing South Boston, I've got to race against national champions and like race with them wheel to wheel and beat them and pass them and stuff, and that's been really cool. But it's really I never want to take that for granted and that experience and getting to do that, but it's really helped me realize that once we put the helmet on, we're all competitors trying to finish first. Yeah. So they're going to race you hard. You got to race them hard and race everybody hard, and that's how it goes.
I was about to say, it's been a pretty big year for you. Like you said, you turned 30, you got married. Looking forward, I know for the previous 10, 11, 12 years, racing probably had a lot easier handle on your full attention.
Yeah.
But now that you're a husband and a father, and I don't want to say 30's old because I'm 32, so that means I'm really old. But getting out of your 20s, the world starts filling out a little bit more.
That's right, 100%.
What kind of change have you seen in yourself by how you look at racing now as opposed to how you did at 16 when it was just get me out there and let me go?
Well, it's just one of those things. I've done it for so long now, and I've put so much effort into trying to make it work and be successful. I think back to when I was a teenager and first starting in the late models when I was, early 20s, and just how much I wanted to do it. And like, it took everything I had. I was still living at home, so like any, opportunity I had, any money I had to spend, I spent it on my racing and just trying to get to where I had what everybody else had. And I think about all that, and I think about all the effort I put in, and I'm at the age now where I am a lot smarter when it comes to how I devote my time to, and of course I have a wife and a daughter now, and I enjoy spending time with them, and it's not that I feel like I have to spend time with them, it's I want to. So yeah. that definitely changed my priorities around quite a bit. A couple years ago when we raced and finished third in the state of Virginia and 25th in the country, we raced a lot, and it took a lot, but we were all in. I hadn't started dating Brittany at the time, and we were, I was single and could come home and just live out here in the shop all night. every night and really put the effort in and spent the money that I really didn't have to make it work. And as rewarding as that was, it was also a reality check that unless I never got a break or never had a sponsor that could really help me fund my racing, that was probably, it could very well be the best year I ever had. So fast forward to 2020, now I'm married, got a daughter and everything that, of course, they're my priority, and I have to make sure they're taken care of, and I give them all the attention I have. It definitely, affects how much I have to give in my tank. Having a very responsible job that takes a lot out of me, and then having the commitment and the devotion to want to be a father and a husband, racing's kind of had to take a back burner. And it's not that I wanted it to be that way. It's just that's just how life is. You turn 30, your priorities change. You can't do this forever. So I say all that. I mean, I still love it. I love it. I would spend every moment, outside of spending time with my wife and daughter, out here working or going to racing or watching racing or reading about racing. But things change, man, and
life comes at you.
It does. And I mean, I'm looking for. I'm not ready to quit yet by no means. We're building another car right now. This was to replace my car that got tore up at Hampton last year, and we were going to have it ready at the beginning of this year. But, COVID hit, and we kind of just chilled out and spent all summer working on it, and it's still not together, but it's getting there. So we'll have it together for next year. But I'm definitely, things are starting to slow down when it comes to racing. I'm definitely don't see myself getting back into doing it every week again, maybe once or twice a month. I mean, the way the South Boston schedule works out for us is just very convenient.
Every other week.
Every other week. The financial standpoint, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's the most affordable track to race at. They run a tire that doesn't really wear out, so you can practice on a set of tires for a long time before you need new ones and stuff. And they are only 2 tires, so I mean that's a whole different area. But that kind of schedule really suits me right now. So it's always been tough. Everybody's always giving me a hard time about why I quit running Ace and why I don't want to run Ace more often and stuff. And once I got into responsibilities with having a job and where you had to be dependable and stuff, it's hard for me to get away on Fridays to get to the track. And so once you get those kind of responsibilities, and sometimes you work in situations where you can't get off early to go race on Fridays. I love the Friday night thing because you have your whole weekend. You
still got to get there.
So I had a few times back 2 or 3 years ago, back when I was running Monk's car quite a bit. I'd get to the track and miss all of practice and have to sit in the car and go out and qualify or go race with no practice and stuff. I mean, it was challenging and it was fun, but it just puts you at a disadvantage, So that's one thing I've gotten smarter at, is trying not to put myself in bad situations where I'm at a disadvantage. So now when we go race, we pick and choose when we race and try to make sure we're putting our best effort forward. And that's one of the things that's made this year so difficult. Like we said earlier, we were talking earlier about the whole engine parity. 2 years ago or 3 years ago when they came out and got the late model engines down to basically 3 engines, they were all very equal.
Yeah.
So, I could show up in 2018, run top 3, South Boston, had some good runs at Langley. Like we had, we only had one engine, but it was pretty equal to everything else. And then this year, like everything in racing, people figure out better ways of doing things. And
Yep.
They opened up the Harrington motor to kind of be, I guess the Joey Harrington's machine shop got overran with just, they couldn't keep up with everybody wanting one of their engines. So then NASCAR opened it up to where pretty much any engine builder could get the kit, put it together per the specs, and then boom, there you had a Harrington motor. Well, of course, you open it up to 20 different people that are super smart at building engines. They're all going to find tricks here and there to make their engine better than somebody else's. So now, I say all that, now you have an engine that has 30 more horsepower than the only engine I have, which is a Chevy spec upgrade. So
you're getting pulled
hard. and that's part of why we struggled so much at Ace. Ace used to be, back when I first started racing late models over there, Ace used to be a place where you could race, and it was a tight little bull ring where you didn't have to have the best motor, you didn't have to have the best car, you didn't have to have the best equipment.
You could get
to
away
be competitive.
Yeah, you could get away with not being
right,
having as much money in it.
That's right. And now it's gone away from that. I mean, everybody has access to the technology that's out there now and the best stuff, and just the difference in the engine parity. I mean, not making excuses, just being completely honest. That's what's contributed to my disappointment this year of racing, because just going out there and just being at a disadvantage from the start. Ace has long enough straightaways where, it makes a difference. When you can't keep up with somebody off the corner and you're already running more gear and your tires end up spinning later in a run, and you just can't keep up with the bigger motors, it makes it difficult. And they've tried, all the tracks have tried moving weight around and like giving us a weight break and stuff, but getting through the corner faster than somebody else, if they can just pull right by you coming off the corner because they have 30 more horsepower, you can't pass. So I say all that, hopefully this winter they'll do something to equal them back up. But that definitely, knowing that going to the track and you got an engine that's 30 horsepower off, it's pretty much maxed out. Like, you can't do anything to it to get any more out of it, and then you're competing against those big, motors, and everybody has the availability to get one. Well, I don't have 18, 20 grand just to go out and buy a new engine because that's what's winning right now, so it's like I kind of just have what I have, and it's definitely made it where it's been difficult to keep up this year. But hopefully over the winter they'll do something to kind of bring them back together, and then next year we'll be a little bit more competitive.
All right. My friend, it's been good to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Good to see you. And it's, I hate to say we're getting older. We both got scruff on our face.
We are, though.
It's kind of cool to see how far it's come. And, I appreciate you making time for me. And
yeah.
I'm sure this year's probably done for you, but hopefully next year we can have as many fans as we want, and we can go to Ace and South Boston and Orange County, whatever, and get back to a little bit of normalcy. But it's been good to catch up. I had fun learning about you today.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming out, and we'll catch up sometime.
Yeah, man. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Half Price Concessions podcast. Want to give you guys a little preview of some things we got in the works coming up here during the off season. I know racing's kind of coming to a close, but we've got new episodes coming with Buddy Payne. We're also going to be going back and finishing up what we started with our Tracks of Yesteryear series that we got started in February, and then life got busy and things got in the way and we didn't get around to finishing it, but we're going to finish up our Tracks of Yesteryear series from February. Like I said, a new episode with Buddy Payne. There's new interviews that we're seeking to get with drivers. Make sure you're staying tuned to our YouTube page as well. You can check out our latest vlog on our YouTube page where we went to the dirt track at Charlotte for 4 nights. We're going to try to do more of that stuff going into 2021 and maybe some cool off-season stuff as well. So make sure you're staying tuned to us, not just on the podcast apps, but also make sure you're staying tuned to us on our YouTube pages. We're going to be putting out new material there as well. Special thanks to all of our partners for their support. Thanks to all you for listening to this podcast and supporting it with your listens. That really helps us out a ton. If you have ideas or things you want us to cover over the course of the off season, you can reach out to us on email at halfpricedconcessionspodcast@gmail.com. You can send us a message on our Facebook page, on our Twitter at HPC Podcast. You can also get a hold of us. You can get a hold of me personally on my Instagram page, Tyler Williams. However you want to get a hold of me, however you want to get a hold of us. We love to hear from you. We love to listen. If you got cool ideas, we're certainly up for it, but we got a lot of cool stuff we're going to work toward for 2021 and over the course of the off season. So make sure you're staying tuned to the Half Price Concessions Podcast.